Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a digital marketer in life sciences. And before we get started, let me just play a quick message from our sponsor for this episode. I can get
Being at the epicenter of the next breakthrough in biotechnology. That moment could happen for you this October at Bio on the Bayou 2025, where Southern innovation meets scientific excellence in the heart of New Orleans. Over 300 of the brightest minds in biotech are coming together for 2 extraordinary days in New Orleans. We're talking groundbreaking research from powerhouses like Tulane, Auburn, the University of Mississippi, Xavier University of Louisiana, and LSU Health. Expect revolutionary technologies, cutting-edge research, and industry-shaping expert panels that you won't find at any other event, plus networking opportunities that could transform your career. This isn't just another conference, it's an intensive 2-day summit where real partnerships form. We leverage the cutting-edge Partnering One platform to ensure that you'll connect with exactly the right people, whether you're seeking investors, research partners, or your next big opportunity. The future of biotechnology is being shaped right here in the broader Gulf South and having a global impact. Will you be part of it? Mark your calendar for October 28th and 29th. Head to bioonthebayou.com right now and secure your spot for the most exciting biotechnology event of 2025. The next breakthrough could be yours. Bio on the Bayou 2025. Register today.
In this episode of the Life Science Success Podcast, my guest is Jesse Mendelsohn. He's a senior vice president at Model N with nearly 2 decades of experience in pharmaceutical pricing, revenue, and payer management. So, with that, welcome, Jesse. It's great to have you.
Thank, thank you. It's good to be here. I appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Would you mind just telling listeners just a little bit about your background and what is it that got you started in life sciences?
So it's interesting. I've worked for Model N, which is a company that focuses on revenue management for the life sciences for, as you mentioned, almost 20 years. But I came into Model N because it's primarily a software company. So I came in from the IT side. Both my undergrad and graduate degrees were in information systems. So I joined it because I wanted to work for a software company. But as fortune would have it, I quickly fell in love with the business side. I find myself fascinated by the complexity and importance of the pharmaceutical industry, the dynamics, the way pricing works, and those things. So even within Model N, I had the opportunity to specialize and to really gain tremendous subject matter expertise in life sciences and in pharma, and it became my passion. And it's nice being in a company and in an industry because pharma is also technology focused, where I get to spend so much time at the intersection of life sciences and life saving therapies and technology. So it's been a great 20 years with a lot of interesting things happening.
Yeah, so I want to break that apart just a little bit because I've run across Model N in IT projects in pharma where they're trying to build like a customer master and they're trying to build like here's the data that we're going to use more or less to sort of indicate who can and cannot get prescriptions, who can and cannot receive the medicines that we offer, et cetera. So it's a really interesting field that you're in both the pricing side as well as the software side.
Absolutely. Most patients, you wouldn't, most patients don't have a decent understanding of the complexity of what it takes to get a therapy, like a drug or a vial from the manufacturer's factory into your body, and the complexity of the exchange of data and product and dollars between all the various players there that all have a say and all have an impact and all have process they need to go through with this heavy layer of regulation over the entire thing. So the software that we have is very complicated, and the manufacturers we work for are very complicated because just the industry is just so complicated. So it's there's no better way of putting it. I've talked to some people in telecom and some people in semiconductor, and there are people who claim their industries are complicated. I would put life sciences and particularly pharmaceuticals in the top 10 of US complicated industries.
Yeah, I think in the particular project that I'm thinking about, I think we had to triangulate, like 10 different sort of things to try and figure out whether or not is a prescriber ready to get a particular drug? Is that prescriber licensed in that particular state? Are they able to get a particular thing? And then, oh, by the way, like, whenever we get to the Model N sort of data set, what does that look like for that particular individual as well? So it was for me, it was a very complex thing that I've not seen in any other industry, and I've worked across a lot of different industries in my time now.
Absolutely. It's the things you mentioned, but it's also the provider or the entity, I should say, that's purchasing the product. How are they getting the product? Are they getting it shipped directly from the manufacturer? Do they need to work with the wholesaler? Are they eligible for one to N number of programs that provide discounts on the product? Does the manufacturer even want to honor certain discounts on these products? How does the manufacturer want to honor discounts on these products? I could keep going. Discounts change over time. You could have an entity, let's say a physician practice, eligible for certain pricing and shipping terms on one day, and they change completely the following day based on nine other factors. I mean, I can nerd out on this for a while, but it's everything you said and I mentioned is more, and it's constantly changing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's part of what at least it keeps me going. It's part of the interest that I still have in the field in general. It's just not only are we helping patients, but it's also a very complex puzzle that's fun to sort of be a part of. So yeah,
And it's critically important. I mean, it's being part of this is interesting because it's not just, oh, I'm getting widgets to factories. We're curing disease. That without these complicated mechanisms of data, dollar, and product exchange, uh, people won't get the therapies that they need.
right.
So it's a of critical, vital importance. And the complexity is something that we need to deal with, then, which is why uh, large software systems are typically needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your time in the industry. So how has your time in the life sciences industry shaped just sort of your approach to pharmaceutical pricing, revenue, and government regulation?
Sure. So, it's been a very interesting 2 decades. I will say, and fascinating 2 decades. I will say that, the most manufacturers typically have a commercial side of their house that they make pricing decisions. So they enter into contracts with either hospital systems, group purchasing organizations. They enter into rebate agreements with payers and PBMs. And then on the flip side, you have a government side of the house where they handle rebates to Medicaid and Medicare and contracting with the Veterans Administration and things like that. And what's been fascinating for me and what's shaped my view and of the industry is that over the past 20 years, those have all kind of merged. It used to be that they're almost siloed, that the commercial folks made their decisions and the government folks were seen as more operational. They were just paying these rebates. But now, due to over the past 20 years, the Deficit Reduction Act, the ACA, aka Obamacare, the Inflation Reduction Act, that I can list 90 other pieces of legislation, but also just of court rulings. Um, both sides feed each other. You could have decisions made um, in the commercial side that can end up being money losers because of repercussions on the government side. So the government folks are now as involved in the commercial decision making as any other team, in the organization, and that has been fascinating to me. And at the same time, um, as I've experienced all those groundbreaking changes and new legislation and new rules, having to see these massive pharma companies, these multi-billion-dollar companies, pivot, pivot when it comes to their pricing, their distribution, the way that they comply, and pivot in short time periods, and sometimes foundational business model change has been really. incredible to be part of and also to observe. I think it's interesting to see, you're talking about a manufacturer that might have a $40 billion top line revenue, be told that, oh, by the way, you have 8 months to fundamentally change the way you price products or interact with pharmacies. And they can do it, and we do it. And that's just always a monumental task and something that I'm very proud of. It's been a recurring thing over the last 2 decades.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the milestones in your career. So you talked about the fact that you were on the software side, whenever you came into Model N. But just overall, what were some of the key milestones as you look back in the last 20 years that led you to where you currently are in your current role as senior vice president?
That's a good question. So let me answer it in two ways. First of all, the software side and the industry side. So from a software side, when I first joined Model N, our software was good, but it wasn't feature rich. So the first manufacturers that we had to implement the software at, the software still required a lot of customization and changes and improvements, and it didn't cover all the requirements for big pharma. But large milestones for my career from that side was when probably 10 years into it, we were starting to implement it very, very large manufacturers. And we were able to implement our software soup to nuts that manage all the pricing, all the government pricing, all the chargebacks and rebates with very minimal customization. So the fact that we had finally made a suite that we could just slide into these large manufacturers and configure to meet their requirements without writing all this code, that was a big moment for me. That was a moment for me in my career. That was a moment for the company, and that was a big time when we realized, oh wow, we are the solution for this. Now, to switch over to the industry side, um, as I mentioned, like, you can't make good software for an industry unless you really deeply understand that industry. And pharma revenue management, it's not CRM, it's not ERP, it's not CPQ, it's not one of these general not homogenized, homogenous, I'd say, types of software where you could go take classes in, and there's business schools that have specializations in it. It is a very specific niche within a niche that you typically can't um, learn the traditional way. So I would say really the other moment of truth or milestone in my career is when I finally got it. When I finally recognized myself and other people as an industry subject matter expert. And frankly, the fact that I have enough respect to be invited to be on these podcasts or to speak at national conferences and sit on policy discussions in Washington and interact, frankly, with some of the most elite and well-respected leaders in pharmaceutical companies, law firms, and think tanks, that gives me tremendous satisfaction. And while I may seem suave and comfortable in these environments, I still pinch myself when being able to interact at the same level as some of these people. And the reason why I've been able to do that is really just recognizing the strong, deep subject expertise that is required to correctly give advice, to implement software, and to relate to folks in this industry, because you need to know it, and you need to know how every single piece touches every other piece. And when I finally got there, I would consider that a career milestone.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your current role at Model N. What does a typical day look like for you?
Sure. So I'm in the services side of Model N. So I'm in the professional services consulting, if you will, side of Model N. And I've always been there in one way, one way or another. Like I've of course changed roles, changed titles, but I've always been within services. I've never been in product. I've never been in sales. But that said, so there's kind of three main areas that I'm responsible in services. The one is service sales. So this is the team that actually goes out and gets statements of work drafted, make sure we really understand the type of need a manufacturer is asking from us, whether it's some advisory work or expert services, or just give them our advice on things, all the way to they want us to retrofit something to their system or integrate it with another system, to expanding additional modules, or we want to deploy to Croatia, those types of things. Scoping that work and properly scoping it, staffing, and getting those signed. Uh, Further down, I'm also responsible for all of the US and EMEA based delivery teams. So the teams who are actually in the field, configuring, testing, tuning, building, or advising around our software, they also report up to me. And lastly, I'm responsible for the education department. So it doesn't matter how well your software works and how well it's tuned and how flawless it meets your requirements. If the business users don't really know how to use it well, it's all for nothing. So we have a small but mighty education team and a lot of online content that we publish, as well as in-person training that we're responsible for. So if in short, essentially what I'm responsible for is the universe of getting our software up and running and making sure people know how to use it.
Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, absolutely critical, especially whenever you have projects to implement inside of, pharmaceutical companies, and you have to get it and get it right. But then also, from your side, just making sure that you have, the right people trained at the right level so that they can support those people is critically important too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, manufacturers rightfully expect that the people that we put on their projects understand their business, and the people that we put on their projects understand the legislation and the laws and what it means to implement this. So, building up our own resources and investing in them, and making sure that they earn the respect of people for whom they're working at manufacturers is very important. You send in I'm not putting anybody down, but you send in a green business analyst to a project who might have experience with generic contract management software or something, and within a few minutes of sitting with a pharmaceutical subject matter expert, it gets ugly. It gets ugly. It's important that we really invest in our people and make sure they're trained and make sure they understand, really, as I keep the point I keep coming back to, not just the software that we make, but the industry that we serve.
Yeah, and I mean, there have been a couple of vendors that I've seen repeatedly across different pharmaceutical companies, because I oftentimes work across, lots of different pharmaceutical companies, and the interesting part to me is how many times the same company can trip over that same thing and still not learn that critical lesson. One, you need educated people, but two, you need to understand what your project what your product is and what it isn't. Because we, just recently wrapped up a project, where somebody had completely overcommitted, on their capabilities, and we just struggled from the start to finish, and just continued to do that throughout time. And yeah, obviously, it was not a Model N project that I'm talking about, because I would never disclose those kind of details on this show. Everybody knows that, but at the same time, it's a very frustrating thing in our industry, because whenever you say to people, look, you really need to understand this industry in and out, it's not something that's just said flippantly. It's something that's really critical, because we're delivering something at the end of the day that's going to affect patients. So
Exactly, and it's so agreed. I'm glad you mentioned affecting patients, because if ordering goes wrong, there could be delays to shipments, and if pricing can't get executed, it could be delays to shipments. But also, to be clear, there's the regulatory aspect. There's these umbrellas of laws that are over these manufacturers, and if and it's Model N often that is calculating the government prices that are used to pay Medicaid rebates. Now we calculate them according to each manufacturer's policy. But if we don't have a good understanding of why they're being calculated, or the laws, the rules behind them, and we don't configure them properly, or we don't know how to properly get the information that we need from manufacturers to understand their policy and methodology, that's going to cause issues and project delays, and a number of tie out problems that just cause headaches for everybody. And it's absolutely the case. I say, whenever I keep coming back to this point, but I can't say it again. Whenever we have new business analysts or new folks that we hire, or people ask my advice of, what will be good for my career at Model, and I say, learn the industry, and then the software will make sense.
yeah, absolutely would. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, the the Model N approach, from a revenue optimization and compliance for life sciences, and how does Model N approach this, and what is the company's mission?
Sure. So let me start with the last part, company's mission. So we are a revenue management company. We innovated in that space, and more specifically, reducing or even eliminating revenue leakage. So what does that mean? People say revenue leakage. So think about this. Manufacturers, specifically pharma manufacturers, have countless agreements. They price their products when they're ordered. They pay distributor rebates, also known as chargebacks, to wholesalers related to contracts that they have downstream with indirect customers like hospitals. They have PBM rebates that they pay. That's very popular in the news right now about the PBM rebates or access rebates that they pay. They have mandatory rebates that are paid to Medicaid, Medicare. They have pricing they have to execute to the Veterans Administration. I can go on. And these amount to, for many manufacturers, billions of dollars that run through our system. So, if you think of it from that perspective, what Model N does is make sure the right customer gets the right price that they're eligible for the right product on the day that they order it. We also make sure that the rebate is paid to the penny that is owed based on the contract terms and the data available. And that might seem boring, but to get that right requires no silos, requires one source of truth, requires rigidly accurate and tested numbers. And if you get it wrong, I'll give an example. If you get it wrong, let's say rebate calculation is off by 1%. But if you're paying $1.4 billion of rebates per year, that 1% is a substantial, meaningful number to the manufacturer. And also, if that 1%, potentially underpays a government entity, for example, that could land the company in hot water. It's not just, oh, the rebate's inaccurate. It's, oh, we might have broken a law with that inaccurate rebate.
Yeah.
Same thing with interactions with wholesalers. If you're not reimbursing the wholesaler for the indirect sales properly, and you're not scrubbing the data that they send you, and you're not analyzing that, does this sale match the contract that I agreed to, and you're just paying, you're likely overpaying, and that affects your gross to net, that affects your bottom line, and on and on. So there's countless examples that we have of it's interesting. Of course, we save people money. Of course, we save revenue. We maximize revenue at Model N. But really, all we're doing is enforcing that you're only paying to the penny what you owe, and that you are collecting in and pricing exactly what you expect to collect in based on the pricing agreements that you made.
Yeah, so important. In terms of the complexities that you guys have to continually navigate, from pharmaceutical pricing and then also Medicaid and state pricing laws, how do you do that?
It's funny because you're right. It's huge. It's huge. So I read. There's multiple people I follow on LinkedIn. There's organizations that I follow that have newsletters that I read religiously. I don't know if you want me to plug anything, but there's folks that I'm very grateful. I also have I also have, I'm very fortunate to have subject matter experts from pharmaceutical companies and law firms that will take my phone call. So if I call some of them, I'll say, I don't understand this new law that happened, or there was something here that they'll explain it to me. And also, I'm fortunate to work in Model N with so many other subject matter experts. We have our own internal group called Government Pricing and Friends, where anything that new that comes, we forward it to the group, and we'll have a spirited discussion about what does this mean for us, what does this mean for our customers, what does this change, what are both intended and unintended consequences of this change. And that's one a big area that I strongly am pleased with and happy with. If people are looking where to learn, I'll plug two things. There's the
Yes.
Drug Channels Institute blog, and that's by Dr. Adam Fine. And I will also plug the newsletter by the National Pharmaceutical Council. Both of those are things that are regularly updated, that are a source of up-to-date information.
Yeah, great I'm glad that you did that, because I mean, obviously people might have questions. I certainly can't answer them, so it's great to great to know where you would go for your sources. So what are some of the innovative projects or initiatives that you're currently working on at Model N?
So there's two things that I'm super excited about right now. The first one is, we call it syndicated customer master. Now it's fascinating. If you think about it this way, every branded, particularly branded, but generics as well, every pharmaceutical manufacturer, if you think about it, has the same set of customers. Think about where you're sitting right now. And think about what's around you. Their customers are doctors' offices, hospitals, pharmacies, long-term care facilities, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a finite number of discoverable entities that purchase prescription drugs. So every manufacturer, every Model N customer technically has the exact same customer list. Yet every manufacturer's master data can be degrees of very nicely and clean to a complete mess. So this is something in modeling we realize why when everybody has the exact same customer list is customer such a mess at customers. There's all these point solutions for master data management and class of trade assignment and duplicate customers. So what we've built is a golden copy, if what you will, is basically we've leveraged uh, uh, data and feeds from multiple entities out there, including HRSA, including the DEA and the Postal Service, and even just Google and some of our own code to essentially make them a customer master. Every manufacturer has the same customers, and this improves processing time. Essentially, this improves literally their customers now without this software yet that will have a resource who goes to Google to, they see a customer on a sale or on a record they don't understand, they haven't seen before. They will go to Google and Google the customer and say, yes, this looks like an oncology clinic in Cedar Rapids. All right, I wonder, is it attached to a hospital? And that's what they'll do to do it. That's just a waste of time. So this is something we're really excited about because it seems like a basic problem, but it's a problem everybody has.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that definitely is something that's needed. I certainly have seen all sorts of versions of this across my many years in life sciences, and so yeah, I've seen the mess, probably the messiest sides overall, in just companies really trying hard to figure it out. And to your point, I mean, look, whenever at the end of the day, if you have somebody that is a pharmaceutical sales rep and they're trying to go to that location and the location's not right, um, one, they will say, "Hey, look, the customer master for some reason isn't right." And then secondly, your only other place to go sometimes is Google. And then you go search, and you find, hey, look, there's five of these possible people. The one we're looking for is an oncologist, not a pediatrician or whatever. And you're trying to work your way through this thread of like, where is this person now? Because they obviously are not at the location that I had them at.
That is absolutely a problem in the field for the sales for absolutely. But it's also a problem in house. Like manufacturers prefer for pricing. Customers, they leave and join different group purchasing organizations. They move, they change their name from St. Mary's Hospital to Hoboken University Medical Center. They do these things, and then suddenly they get pricing messed up, and it's because in the poorly managed master data system of some pharma customer, they don't know who this person is, or they haven't been a member of Vizient for a year, yet they're still giving them Vizient pricing. So there's things like that happen all the time. That you're right, it impacts pricing and it causes revenue leakage, which we hate, and also absolutely it impacts the field as well.
I would imagine. I mean, a lot of the work. I mean, look. This isn't something that I had planned on covering with you, but I do feel like this is an important sort of twist for where we are right now in the conversation as well. I would imagine that between all of the stuff that's currently coming out on large language models, all the stuff that's currently coming out, in data and analytics, has got to be helping you guys as well, in terms of like sorting through all of the information that you have, and really enabling just a lot of this to happen as well.
Yeah, it's true. I will say that is built into the syndicated customer master, both for kind of old school gray matching. So, as I mentioned, is it St. Mary's, is it ST dot, or is it the word Saint spelled out? But also a bit more of intelligence and AI in there to really determine, based on lots of data points, is this entity the same as it used to be, or is this a new customer? So that's built into the CDM tool, which is part of the engine for the syndicated customer master. Absolutely.
Very cool. How does Model N's platform aid pharmaceutical companies in terms of managing the complex pricing and regulatory challenges?
So I would say we both aid and enable it. So we can't anticipate the imagination of the contract marketing departments at pharmaceutical manufacturers. What I mean by that is we can't, if a customer chooses to buy our software, we can't tell them, okay, well, you could only discount customers in one of X number of built-in ways, and you could have one of N number of rebate structures, and that's it. So because there's a huge other industry of innovative contracting, and we're not just talking about discounts and rebates and tiered discounts and tiered rebates. We're talking about value-based contracting. We're talking about clinical outcomes-based contracting, adherence-based contracting, incredibly complicated contracting, particularly for some of the new gene therapy products we're seeing out there, where they're potentially a $2 million treatment, and the insurance company wants the pharmaceutical company to have skin in the game. So we can't show up and say, oh, we can only handle half your contracts. So one of the things we do is we have the flexibility in our commercial contracts to support the imagination of the contract marketing department. And it might take some work, it might take some creativity or members of my team to help implement, but we have incredibly complicated contracting scenarios being managed in our system. Very complicated pricing based on tiers and bundles and kits and historical purchasing patterns, and also extremely complicated rebates based on, did the patient refill the product enough times? Was there a clinical indicator data feed that has to come in there to see that, did the patient's A1C go down beneath a certain amount, or other things we've seen. So we're administering extremely complicated and complex pricing. So we allow manufacturers and their consultants and their pricing and their market access teams to really just use their imagination and innovate when it comes to getting their drug to market, without having to worry about, oh, can the system handle that? Because the system, again, sometimes it takes some hand holding, but the system can handle it. Now, regulatory. Whew. So I grew up, so to say, in the government area. That's been my kind of key focus, and regulatory is constantly changing. And I listed some of the statutes earlier, but it is constantly changing. And as also you mentioned earlier, it's not just at the government level, federal government; it's the states. Right now we'll get some notice that I'm making this up to illustrate it, but Minneapolis now has this submission requirement or this data requirement, or there's a affordability board now in Colorado that's doing some shenanigans that we don't know what that understands. And we need to adapt to that. So we needed to create new software. So for example, when the states first started this, we had to create a whole new module for state price transparency and allow customers to leverage that. Also, the government calculations themselves. The IRA introduced two new government rebates that we have to calculate and support, as well as the maximum fair price under Medicare that we have to support as well. And this needs to be done in a timely fashion. It's just insane, and it's always changing. So making sure we understand it, as I mentioned, and making sure we release in a timely way software updates or guidance on configuring your software to adapt to everything coming down is critical in managing both the commercial and regulatory side, and that's kind of our bread and butter.
Very good. So I'm going to focus on you for a couple of questions. So, what's the greatest piece of leadership advice you've ever received?
Ah, um, Good question. I would say, I'm going to say this wrong. I wish I had a specific quote I can give, but how's this? Know your business, or know that you don't know your business. And I mean by that. And I mean that because if you're new to a company or you're new to an industry, it is not bad that you do not know that, but you should recognize that you don't have the skill set or the subject matter expertise, and you should empower yourself by surrounding about yourself with people at that organization who really understand it and can help you make decisions and can give you the background and it could really inform the history here of why this happened and what this regulation is. But if and until you say that you know it, what I've seen that great leaders do, they either become like what I chose to do, though it took me a long time. They become strong subject matter experts so that their teams respect them and believe them and put credence to the decisions that they're making because they know, oh, Jesse gets it. Jesse understands what we're talking about. We're going to do it. Or they recognize that they're not there yet. And they recognize to the team that I'm not there yet, but I'm making this decision because I advise with these people. I realize this. I analyze this. Those are great leaders for people who want to work for them. You all know the opposite with it. Don, I'm sure you've seen it where somebody comes in from industry A to a company that's industry B, and he or she thinks that it's just it's the same thing, and it doesn't go well. The employees don't like working for somebody who's making decisions that out of context, who doesn't take the time to know that they don't know what they're talking about, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so important as well. I feel like even as a leader to just recognize where those gaps exist, so then that way, you can put good people around you that do know how to address whatever that is, so that you're not trying to oversimplify something, but at the same time, you have a team that essentially, can fully support those things at the end of the day.
E- Exactly, and it empowers your team. It makes makes your team useful, makes them recognize their own experience that they could explain, and it's a great way. And I've found that I personally enjoy working for better for people who know what they know what they don't know, and I also feel that my team enjoys working for me largely because I certain areas I know what I'm doing. There are still areas where I say I have no idea. Let me bring in a subject matter expert.
Excellent. Jesse, what inspires you?
Well, that's a good question. Okay, so I didn't come up with this quote. This is I think a New York Times article. I could be wrong. We're in the golden age of medicine right now. It's incredible. It's just incredible to see what we're seeing. We're curing and treating diseases in ways that are unimaginable. Like if you read the news of the new drug launches, we're curing diseases or maybe subsets or submutations of diseases that were scourges on society for centuries. Like hemophilia, sickle cell, many cancers. These manufacturers are releasing cures for these things. It's just incredible. It's interesting. HIV is now something you just take a pill for every day and live your life, or you get a shot every couple of months and go on and live your life and just live a normal life. And there's nothing that just thinks for those of us even our age who remembers when HIV was a death sentence. Everybody who got
Yeah.
HIV died. There's those horrible things from the 80s and 90s. And now it's just okay. Well, whatever you it's just live your life. It astounds and it inspires me and it makes me very pleased to support this industry. It's just incredible. I think people, almost are getting used to the fact that these new treatments are out there, and there's only more to come. There's innovations. This is all public information coming in Alzheimer's and ALS, and there are these breakthroughs coming in even more types of cancers. It's really, really incredible, and I'm just inspired by these press releases or these jaw-dropping news articles about strong results in a clinical study for something that has just been impossible to even treat, let alone cure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. What concerns you?
So, um, frankly, I'm not getting political, but research funding. Research funding. This is not just federal research funding. This is because of all the aforementioned things I mentioned, all the new laws, all the new regulations, all the new, competitive aspects. In internal manufacturer spending, their margins are being crunched, and when margins are being crunched, they might cut R&D. And also, it's just common news that federal research funding is drying up, both for manufacturers, both for university level, and that golden age of medicine that we're living in right now could just fizzle. It could just fizzle without money and resources to support basic and advanced research, and or to enable other companies to support basic and advanced research. All these things we're enjoying, and these clinical trials that we're watching that could save people who never were able to save before, it could just all come to a halt, and that is something that concerns me and keeps me up at night.
Yeah, I think it's a real concern. I mean, I was having a conversation last week, shortly after the podcast, actually last week, where somebody was telling me that a particular university's research funding, 60% of it came from the government. And so now 60% of it's essentially gone until we figure
Yeah.
out, what's the next step. Again, not to make it political, but just trying to figure out, like, what do you do with 60% of your costs while you sort of try and continue things forward? I have a feeling there's probably a level of, good Samaritans that will come along and say, hey, look, there's some of this that we could support, but it's probably not enough to fully fill that gap of 60%. And this is only one particular university. I mean, there are other universities that their split was a little different, and so who knows, how this plays out, in the end. And then, you have at the same time, you have companies that are extremely small, say less than 10 people, that have been working on the same thing for the last few years with some support from government funding and a very, very thin sort of level of support from venture capital and other funding sources for the last couple of years has been tough anyway. And so now
Exactly.
without some of the things that you would get otherwise from states or from the federal government, what are you going to do? I just had I've described this before in other episodes where I believe that there will come a time where big pharma will turn to look at the market of companies that are developing the next series of molecules and creating the next level of technology, and there's going to be a vacuum there because
Yeah.
sort of those things will come along in 10, 5 to 10 years, right? So there's a lengthy period of time that all this stuff occurs. And will we see it tomorrow? I doubt it, but we will see a future where there'll be a gap, I believe.
I, I agree. I agree. It's going to be, and again, we'll see how things play out. I'm sure the news is different from an hour ago based on the world we live in right now. So we'll see how this plays out. But it is a genuine concern, and it's also like not just funding, but the legislation that's passed, the Inflation Reduction Act, well-meaning, has a lot of unintended consequences that also could, halt potentially getting existing drugs approved for new indications, or biosimilar and generic competition. There's a lot of unintended consequences that are coming up that could also, again, uh, you know, reduce the glory of this golden age of medicine that we're in. It's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question, what excites you?
Um, again, I think I've plugged my company enough, but with the first thing I think about is our Rainmaker conference, which is next month. Especially since COVID, this is just generally speaking, conferences in general. I used to be in the field all the time, and I learned so much by physically sitting in a manufacturers with their contract marketing people and really getting to know and being in the rooms while they're discussing their 340B policy, or their pricing things. And you know some manufacturers are back fully fully on site. Many manufacturers are not, and even the ones that are back, their budgets they're giving to bring consultants there are low. They like us to be remote. So I'm so excited to be with people and physically learn from the manufacturer community, which is where I got a lot of my knowledge originally, all in the same place. So, of course, that applies to our Rainmaker conference in May, but also in general to some of these larger conferences I'm able to attend. It gives me something very much to look forward to in my job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success Podcast. Thank you for being here and sharing what it is that you do in Model N. I hope that a lot of people gleaned a lot of great perspectives from this, because I definitely think that this is not an easy place to play, in our overall field. And so I definitely got a lot out of the conversation.
I appreciate it, Don. I enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks.